Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicings rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on until victory is won. Thank you to the Athens Human Relations Council, to Ms. Lawson and Ms. Deadweiler. This is an honor. Growing up, this is a program that I attended with my parents, Fred Sr. and Lee Smith, every year. They would bring my brother Joseph and I. And my senior year, I was fortunate enough to be one of the scholarship recipients. So there are ways in which this is a full circle moment. This is also an opportunity to honor and remember Reverend Nunnally, the founder, who was a mentor, including when I was fortunate enough to be an Explorer Scout under his leadership. Today's theme is the urgency of the beloved community, which raises the question of what is a beloved community. The philosopher / theologian Josiah Royce first used the term, and it was Dr. King who, of course, invested it with deeper meaning and gave it broader popularity. The late John Lewis continued to urge us to achieve that beloved community. But none of that really answers, right? What is the beloved community? Dr. King noted that for him, the beloved community was a global vision in which all people could share in the wealth of the earth. He believed that this was a realistic goal, according to the King Center, that could be attained by a critical mass of people who were committed to and trained in the philosophy and methods of nonviolence. Under his vision, poverty and hunger and homelessness would not be tolerated because the standards of human decency simply would not allow it. Instead of being blinded by racism and discrimination, we would have an inclusive sense of sisterhood and brotherhood. The vision of the beloved community was not only central to Dr. King's vision and legacy, it was also deeply imbued in the visions of two titans who have recently passed away. Congressman John Lewis, who I've mentioned, and also Bell Hooks. Congressman Lewis once explained that democracy is not a state. It is an act that each generation must do its part to help build. And it was Bell Hooks who reminded us that if we want a beloved community, we must stand for justice, have recognition for difference without attaching privilege to difference. Close quote. To hear those words is to be reminded of the work that still needs to be done and the urgency with which we must do it. We do not live in a post-privilege nation or a post-hunger nation or a post-poverty nation, let alone a post-privilege, post-hunger, post-poverty world. Exploitation, greed, and indifference still haunt us. And so does division. We live in almost entirely different realities sometimes, governed by different facts. And increasingly, it's difficult for people who disagree with each other to even hear each other and believe in one another's goodwill. As an old law school classmate said to me the other day, when people feel unheard, they at some point stop listening. Now, of course, Dr. King reminded us that the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice. But it is also evident including from the state of today's world, that does not happen on its own. It happens through faith and through work. To help us understand what that might look like, I will return where I began, the powerful words of James Weldon Johnson in Lift Every Voice and Sing. We're all accustomed to singing them, but perhaps less accustomed to reflecting on their meaning. These words have served as something of an anthem on a march toward justice over the past century. Lift every voice and sing. Every voice. Everyone, this is a call for us all to lift up our sleeves and get to work. And we must lift up our voices when we see injustice. And justice thrives the most when good people say nothing. Each and every one of us has different spheres of influence, different places where we can lend our voice, different costs and consequences when we do speak truth to power. And so perhaps there is no one-size-fits-all solution, except that we all, everyone, every voice must be lifted. Lift our voices about voting laws, as people at the state capitol are increasingly attempting to make it more difficult for us to exercise our precious right. Lift up our voices about a system of mass incarceration, one that currently incarcerates more people than live in the cities of Atlanta, Boston, Miami, and Washington, D.C. combined. Lift our voices about a nation where people still live without health insurance and find themselves struggling or bankrupted just to have the treatment or the medicine that they need to survive. But lifting every voice doesn't just mean lifting our own voices. Lifting every voice means amplifying the voices of those who are systemically unheard, those who face special consequences when they speak out, or those who can't protect themselves at the ballot box, children, people facing abuse in cages. Part of the beloved community is to call out especially the injustices that fall on people who don't hold the microphone, to write letters to legislators on their behalf, to protest on their behalf, to remember them when we vote. I sometimes say to friends when thinking about voting that one strategy is to think about the most marginalized folks and vote like them. So lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony of liberty. That's the dream that we are moving toward, one of liberty, one in which we all are free. Free, I think, not just to survive, but to thrive and to live in communities of thriving. Those are the harmonies. The freedom to speak and vote and be free from police brutality. Those harmonies come from chords of freedom. The freedom that comes with having the physical necessities of food, shelter, and medicine, allowing us all to live our dreams. The freedom to be free from shackles and cages, literal and figurative. The thing about harmony is that not everyone has to sing exactly the same chord or exactly the same note. But together, when the chords are love-centered, we can sing with harmonies of liberty. And we can rejoice. We can rejoice high as the listening skies, and we can let it resound as loud as the rolling sea. We can let ourselves to collectively march on until victory is won. The reason why it is urgent to achieve a beloved community is because victory is not yet won. We are still marching. We are still singing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. And let no one tell us otherwise. The past is dark. Chattel slavery, Jim Crow, segregation that lasted deep into the lives of many people who are in this virtual audience. And there is faith and resilience, though, in those dark days, too. People who overcame the unimaginable. This often meant praying prayers nightly to an unknown God and bending their knees humbly to an unseen power. Tapping into something greater than ourselves, believing in the power of love. And we must also sing a song that is full of the hope that the presence has brought us. For all the darkness, there is so much reason to hope. We are much closer to the vision of the beloved community than we were 40 or 50 years ago. Despite the efforts to make it harder to vote, long are the days when people are murdered for attempting to register people to vote. People may marry whom they love. Schools are integrated, at least as a matter of law. And while much is broken, wealth gaps, police brutality, mass incarceration, a broken healthcare system, there are reasons to hope. Remember the hundreds of thousands of people marching a year and a half ago around the country and around the world for racial reckoning? There are people ready to urgently pick up the mantle and march. Even this online event is a sign of the hope that the presence has brought us. We find creative ways to hopefully celebrate safely in the middle of a global pandemic. And we face the rising sun of a new day begun. So let us march on until victory is won. I'm going to end with a poem by Maya Angelou, Caged Bird, because it also speaks to the harmonies of freedom. It reminds us what's possible when we fight for that freedom and when we become free. And it reminds us what it sounds like when we're not. Caged bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind, and it floats downstream until the current ends. And it dips its wings in the orange sun rays, and it dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks in its narrow cage can seldom see through its bars of rage. Its wings are clipped, and its feet are tied, and so it opens its throat to sing. The cage bird sings a fearful trill of things unknown but hoped for still. And his tune is heard on a distant hill, for the cage bird sings for freedom. The free bird, he thinks of another breeze, and the trade wind soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a cage bird? The cage bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, and so he opens his throat to sing. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on a distant hill. For the cage bird sings for freedom. Thank you.